Recently, I released a video praising the return and resurgence of Halo Infinite, and as polarizing as that video might have been for some viewers, I thought I'd double down and throw my hat in the race of other heavily debated Halo conversations. The purpose of this video is to analyze and dissect all the core Halo campaigns ranked by how much I enjoyed playing them recently. This will be excluding the Halo Wars entries because they are an entirely different beast, but I do have to say it's really heartwarming seeing a series that started in that playstyle eventually get its day in the sun. I'd love to see a Halo Wars 3, but I'm getting a little distracted. Most of these games I've played for over a decade, closer to 2 decades with the early titles. I've never been a master at them, but their foundation is such a pillar in my autumn of my childhood and birth for the love of fantastic sci-fi. And I have to say, if you had asked me a few months ago what my order might have been, I'm not so sure this would have reflected my results at all. I got to look at all these games with hindsight now that so much time has passed since their release, some having lost that nostalgic edge, while others had absolutely surprised me and are still able to take me on a journey that's fun. But I gotta be honest, there's a few placements in here that are gonna make you mad. I can already tell. It almost made me mad to admit them, but it's the way that it is. Just a disclaimer, the ranking of this list is completely subjective and reflects nothing other than my impressions and the level of enjoyment that I experienced revisiting this world and the stories told. Their ranking is mostly based on the writing and the story of the campaigns, while I'll also factor in gameplay mechanics and how those have aged, but everything on the side of multiplayer will not be something contributing to my answers whatsoever, so the rankings might have been totally different if that were the case. Because some lower tier games had fantastic online experiences, while for me the stories fell more flat than others. And that's why this series is so popular to begin with over other shooters. The world building and lore is so rich and scattered that it's been debated probably longer than most people have actually played the multiplayer. Hell, I'm almost 5 books deep into this expanded Halo universe in the novels now, stories I've never read but I'm really enjoying as I further get into the world. But that's a different video. So without further ado, let's get in a fight together.
Spartan Veil online.
Weapons free. Contact.
In 8th place, we have Halo 5 Guardians. Is there really anything to be said? I could just rank this game at the bottom, and I'm pretty sure everyone would agree and give me a hug after the trauma I just experienced. But let's take away the false advertising expectations away for this game and put them aside, and just look at things for what they are, what we got, not what we thought we were getting. And in all honesty, this is the one Halo game I had never really played the campaign before, so getting to play through this in 2024 was an interesting venture to say the least.
It's not too late to stop this.
Stop. No, John. This is too important.
I remember vividly playing the first 2 levels on launch, not really vibing with it, thinking maybe I was just getting older, and switching over to the multiplayer and telling myself that one day, when I'm ready, I'll come back. Almost 10 years went by before that day finally came, which is never really a good sign. I'll start by saying this game gets a lot of hate. Rightfully so, but also maybe we were all a little bit too harsh. I see what 343 was trying to do here. Between the upgraded movement, improved firefights with the Prometheans, and the mirrored teams at your disposal, it reeks of Destiny in a way and other similar games when it comes to this mechanic. The way you can be revived or navigate the squad's objectives, which is kind of unlike when you have a fire team in Reach. They're really telling you what to do. In Halo 5, you're in command, but also you could completely ignore this mechanic and just run through the missions with the AI Spartans in tow behind you. The story is fine, I guess. I know a lot of people felt betrayed in 2015 by the shift from marketing to the actual story, but I want to look at it for what it is. And in the end, it's just not great. It's not terrible, it's just kind of fine, which in a lot of ways can be described as worse than awful, because awful is at least a triggered emotion that made me feel something. After the first 4 missions of the game, I didn't feel much of anything. But I was at least trying to admire the scope, the art style, and overall beauty of what 343 was trying to do. It just didn't work for me then, and it doesn't work for me now. But I was able to appreciate for what it was this time around, and I had some fun with the weirdness this game tried to pull over on us. The combat is fun sometimes, but I think was actually perfected and repolished when it came to Infinite that felt more like Halo. That's the biggest problem with this game, it just doesn't feel like Halo. You could call this game any sci-fi shooter, and I would believe you. Guardians feels like a completely different game than the entire rest of the series, with an interesting but kind of conflicting identity crisis. But one thing is for sure, after reading through all the old Halo books this year, it was really nice to finally meet Blue Team in the flesh.
know what that condescending bitch said to me after our first game of chess?
In 7th place, we have Halo 4. I think this game's placement is fair and expected, but I want it to be really clear that I actually really enjoy Halo 4. It's far from perfect, and the Prometheans are absolutely no fun to fight, but there's a tone through this entire game that is extremely Halo.
Still good for something, I guess.
The opening mission to the fall onto the shield planet of the Forerunner world is great tension and echoes the opening of Combat Evolved in a way that feels fresh and awe-inspiring for new fans. Level design and moments of high tension are present for most of the game, which creates this almost guitar solo feeling throughout the majority of the campaign. Like, I'm pretty sure this is the first game where you actually get to fly a pelican as the chief. The mech suit, the crumbling rock floor beneath you, so many moments of high intensity gameplay that really comes to a screeching halt when you unfortunately get to the mission Reclaimer. Being a fly on the back of the slowest moving Elon Musk truck is the weirdest contrast to pacing I've ever seen.
Well, someone's overcompensating.
It feels like time padding more than something we actually needed to see firsthand. Gameplay is somewhat forgettable and derivative of what was already there. Although sprinting without being an armor ability made its debut here, which might sound silly now, but for the time was a much needed change for the series and overall feel to keep the game growing with the new era. Assassinations are fun, but you can accidentally do several back to back, leaving this animation that might get you killed. And you can't even cancel out of it. It's frustrating. The Forerunner weapons were cool the first time you picked one up and it did that early 2010s Transformer dance in your hand, but once you start firing each iteration, it just kind of got stale really fast because they don't feel that different from other weapons available to you in the same sandbox. I can't stand the way these guys teleport every second. It's a cool looking effect, but it's about as fun as riding a cliche Halo gondola, which this game also has. And if I have to press one more button as an objective, I'm going to end it all. The Chief's armor looks weird, but it works and well, yeah, the graphics are actually alright, I guess. But man, do I hate this guy. What a boring, stupid looking vampire of an antagonist. I literally don't care about his plan or the Doctor Doom schemes. Maybe I'll care more if I read those extended universe books that talk about Forerunners, but the smaller, more intimate story between Chief and Cortana, that's where this game is interesting. There's some really moving and touching shit here, and Jen Taylor is giving the performance of her entire career. This character has never felt so fleshed out and ironically human.
Before this is all over, promise me you'll figure out which one of us is the machine.
Honestly, Halo 4 might be one of the strongest written stories of the entire series, mostly due to the fact that these characters have goals, motivations, and actual arcs. In a world of stories that are mostly based around alien bad, big green guy good, this story went above and beyond itself to expand on the emotions already built by Bungie. 343 wrote a sad and soft epic ending for one of its most beloved characters as a launching point for its next chapter, with Microsoft's biggest and most beloved franchise. I think that's why most of us were so let down by 5. It felt like it almost undid this beautiful moment. Also, side note, I really wish the grunts didn't sound like they do in this game. I miss their cuter little voices of fear, and in this they just sound like weird vibrators underwater.
That's the last.
They're creepy, and I hate it. The middle chunk of this game drags compared to the opening, but I think Halo 4 ends stronger than we'd all like to admit sometimes. Spartans never die, but they do cry.
It was my job to take care of you.
We were supposed to take care of each other.
You have one bullet against an entire army. What can you do on your own?
I told you. It's enough.
In 6th place, we have Halo Infinite. Yep, you're mad at me. And that's fair. I'll try to keep this section of this title a bit short and sweet considering it's the newest of the games. So maybe I'm a bit biased to the times, but this campaign is still so much fun to play. I think the open world mechanics and the environment are a little lacking in the fact of there's almost a clear objective to go to next, but instead of the level naturally pointing you in that direction, there's the diversion of this almost Ubisoft mentality of, ooh, what's over here along the way? That almost feels like a distraction more than a reward. There have always been weird, broken explorations in the maps of early Halo games, but instead of feeling like you found a true Easter egg left to discover from developers, it reflects something almost closer to busy work that's only to pad out the quickness of the story. If there had been DLC, like they had originally planned, maybe this system could have been improved upon, but now the way the game stands, it just feels hollow. If you do decide to go searching for these so-called Easter eggs, you're only going to find them in 3 different environments: open woods, banished camps, or Forerunner structures. I understand this is a different Halo, but the lack of different feeling places made the world feel one note and not very alive at all. I still think about the original announcement trailer, littered with animal activity and life, selling the idea that we've never seen a Halo like this before. But in truth, we saw none of that. I guess the rock formations inspired by real-life coastlines of places like Iceland are cool, but the wildlife is as invisible as the elites inhabiting it. The elites, however, are a blast to fight. That's the one saving grace of this game for me. The combat feels really good, almost a true return to form. The grapple is also a very welcomed addition to combat and traversal, especially considering the size of the open map. Not too many bullet sponge brutes, but a wide variety of banished Covenant forces and foes. The Marines that fight alongside you are hilarious, but help you still feel like the Master Chief, and they tug on that nostalgic heartstring of games long past. The boss battles are definitely debatable for some, but I enjoyed them, and it helped create an almost horror vibe to the game that I've been missing since the Flood showed up and combat evolved. Another great little detail that's more just fun Halo lore than it is a story campaign is the multiplayer is technically considered canon. That means my Spartan, your Spartan, they're all technically canon. New recruits, called to action, and various live fire exercises and drills. So if that little detail makes the story more fun for you, then that rocks. Not only are we Chief, but we're ourselves fighting alongside him. This story has lows and highs, but for me the highs outweigh the lows by a long shot. Chief is great. The pilot is a fun ball of emotions that ever reminds you what you're really fighting for.
Yes! 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 We're going home!
Your AI, simply named The Weapon, is a new true form Cortana that feels very fresh and also nostalgic at the same time. And speaking of Cortana, you can forget all about Halo 5, because 343 basically takes it all back with this ending. And thank God they do. If you've been following the big green guy and the funny purple lady for this long, I know this ending made you teary-eyed and love this character send-off. I'm not sure if it's as strong as the one built up to in Halo 4, but it was necessary to save the series. And it's strong enough to remind me of what magic those two characters shared, packaged with a game that's still extremely fun to play. And most importantly, the grunts sound cute again.
It's locked down. Requires a hack.
Okay. And you can do that?
No.
In 5th place, we have Halo Reach.
Jackpot. Transmitting visual. You've seen this, Cat?
Confirmed. Receiving Nova 3 and Nova 6 live visual of a Covenant strike force.
Alright, I can feel you all turning on me already. Yes, this is Bungie's swan song to the beautiful universe they built, but I'm starting to think you all played a different game than me.
You don't even want to hear it?
Fine, I'll hear it.
Again, it goes without saying, I like Halo Reach a lot, and maybe this was your first Halo game, so it hits different for you than it did and does for me. And before you even ask, I purchased this title on launch. I was absolutely hyped for it, and even camped out for the midnight release at GameStop, like we all used to do back in the olden days. And what I'm about to say might not perfectly align with your experiences, and that's okay, because in reality, I love this game and I've played through it so many times with friends. It wasn't fully appreciated when it released, but I think these days it's almost receiving this graduation goggle glaze over the lens, averting your eyes from its shortcomings. But that doesn't make it a bad game. Yes, Noble Team is rad. Yes, Noble 6 is a lone wolf that we all gravitate towards and envision ourselves to be if we had been indoctrinated into the Spartan program. But let's be real, Jeremy. We would have been part of the batch that died and didn't take well to the enhancing drugs. Our Mountain Dew drinking asses wouldn't even make the first cut. I think the biggest flaw of this game is its opening and the first few levels. The top half of Reach is forgettable and kind of boring in my opinion. Back in this era, Call of Duty and Halo were the two massive titans of the shooter community, and in a weird way, they rubbed off on each other on the development side. And you can really see that here in Reach's gunplay, dialogue, and story beats. Plus sprinting, but only if you pick it up as an ability. For some reason, this really pissed people off. The armor abilities were a mixed bag for some players when this game first came out, but but I actually enjoyed them and found there used to be a welcomed addition being built off the equipment system first used in Halo 3. Also, you could get outside the map with these tools, which was hella fun. It mixed up combat and allowed you the chance to enter fights the way you found best to attack. I just wish the story could have felt as innovative when everything kicked off, because the second half of this game is absolute fire. I can't help but feel like I'm somehow teleported into a Call of Duty campaign the moment you're airdropped into the first stages of combat. Some sort of drill instruction as well as search the outskirts of cities of Reach. There's something about those first few missions that just feel off to me. I understand this game is more of a military story from the perspective of a well-ironed team, but that doesn't really come across until members start getting picked off and dying.
Cat, you read his file?
Only the parts that weren't covered in black ink.
Maybe that was on purpose. Maybe Noble 6 was supposed to feel alienated and out of touch with the rest of the group, but that doesn't work for me knowing that your character was always sent in first in every mission. It's a video game, so of course the game wants you to be the one to play, but unlike playing as Master Chief, story-wise it felt weird for your character to be the newbie, yet also somehow the one leading the charge without explanation why. This way of telling the story just made me think I only cared about these characters because they all went out in a blaze of glory, not because they were well written, besides George. We love George.
Tell him to make it count.
It was a really awesome touch, even to this day, to see your personalized armor utilized in the campaign, but I wish the bond had been better developed and established from the get-go of the story. An exciting incident to bring the stakes of this narrative forefront from the beginning.
Oh my god.
Mayday! Mayday! P6 Echo 2, can you maintain altitude? Negative! We're going down!
Son of a bitch. I can't watch this.
Fox Actual, should we send search and rescue birds?
Negative, dispatch. No point.
Everything feels like it wants to unravel like a mystery, but the mystery being the fall of Reach, something we already know, felt like we didn't learn anything new, but were dragged into an epic ending that we never saw the breadcrumbs for. Plus, the book and the game being vastly different isn't confusing at all. Thanks, Microsoft. Now, I know that sounds like a lot of constructive criticism, and maybe almost that I don't enjoy this game, but that couldn't be further from the truth. I just think some of this age shows more now than some of the older titles. It's a product of its time, and that's okay. It's an epic ending to an era of gaming that I and most of us will never see again. There's a level of freedom to this narrative that concludes with a standoff that perfectly slingshots you right to where we started this journey many years ago. A perfect ring, if you will. Personally being chosen to provide and protect the mother of all one-liners, Cortana, getting her safely aboard the Pillar of Autumn with Captain Keyes and the Chief, and then being badass enough to refuse coming along for the ride, but to stay there and fight till the end. It gives me chills to think about. Moments like that are why we play these games at all. If you haven't seen the fan-made trailer by Halo Follower of the Ghost of Reach, you're doing yourself a disservice. It's incredibly inspiring how much the fans resonate with this character and the stories they wish could still be told about him. The epilogue, simply titled Survive, is one of my all-time favorite reveals in gaming. Noble 6 will go down as one of the greatest Halo characters and one of the most unique, faceless characters in all of gaming history. How long did you hold out?
They've got me cornered. I'm low on ammo. If you can hear me, I'm on sub-level 9.
In fourth place, we have Halo 3 ODST. This one probably surprised me the most. In fact, it was really hard for me to rank it this low with how consistent the writing and world building is.
You know the music. Time to dance.
But considering the campaign length and the fact that this was a full price game at the time with no standalone multiplayer other than the addition of Firefight, it suffers almost as a DLC entry to the game that more deservedly stands higher on this list. But I do have to say, this game has aged really well for me. Not that it wasn't loved at the time, but I don't remember appreciating it quite the way I do this go around all these years later. It's impossible to reference ODST without also looking at Reach, because they both resemble each other so much, yet are very different. Each game provides an ensemble cast, a well-oiled team, and standalone newbie character that you take the position of. But instead of a team that is slowly picked apart, you're thrown into a weird, solitary experience that is motivated by the need to sort of get the band back together. And I guess in hindsight, this archetype just is more interesting to me. Not to mention, its dialogue tells you so much with so little. It isn't just military jargon words that are forgettable and boring. It's mixed emotions to perfectly illustrate the dire state the UNSC's military is in at this current time against the Covenant.
I don't remember. That night? What you asked me in the morning?
I remember not getting an answer.
Unlike the strength you feel as a Spartan, this game goes above and beyond to make you experience this sense of loneliness and weakness. A lone soldier that was just dumb enough to sign up for something he had no business in getting involved with. And I love every second of it. The moment you step onto the map, you're instantly injured. I'm aware this is a game mechanic to show you and warn you of the hill you have yet to climb, but I always found it funny that a regular soldier can't just jump cool like the chief.
We'll have to jump.
That's how weak they make you feel. Yet you find the courage to tread on, dodging Covenant troops and finding clues to what fate your fellow drop troopers might have faced. I love that each clue sends you into a flashback from the perspective of your team. It was a great way to visually tell us the smaller stories that play to the strengths of gaming as a medium, more so than just a good level. It innovated and kept you wanting more. They just as easily could have made all these cutscenes, but I guess then the game would have only been like 2 hours long. Giving us these character perspectives was like reading the chapter of a book that you were in control of the outcome of. The game is a bit slower because of this choice, but that just allows the firefights to feel that much more engaging when they happen. My only criticism would be that I wish the moments in New Mombasa at night were built to be a little bit more stealth and flushed out. The levels do such a great job contrasting the two times of day, being alone and being with a team, that I just wish the gameplay reflected that a bit more, allowing you the choice for when you would and wouldn't want to engage in a fight with passing Covenant troops. The music and the atmosphere perfectly teleport you into a story and time you already know, yet provide you with a massive new perspective. The pistol in this game is incredible, and I wish it was something that had been used in games going forward because it's so fun to use. It's not quite the heft of the Combat Evolved Magnum, but there's something so satisfying about using it in a fight that you think you've already lost. The interactive map definitely influences Halo Infinite later on. This game brought back health packs for the first time since Combat Evolved. It's a little more tongue-in-cheek than the other games at times.
Get this thing off of me!
But I think it perfectly rides that line and shows the difference of morale between a super soldier and an everyday foot soldier. The Rookie, by far, is somehow one of the most memorable characters in all of the Halo series, and the man doesn't say a word. That speaks volumes to the quality and craftsmanship of Bungie in this era. Not to mention, this game is a sci-fi nerd's dream, between it being an unofficial Firefly and Battlestar Galactica reunion. The ODST voice cast is extremely likable and well written, telling one of the best Halo stories, and making me wish we got more standalone moments from the perspective of other characters during the war. I know some people have a problem with the last highway mission, but I have to disagree and would say that ODST has some of the more innovative and interesting level design of the entire series. There is so much more variety and fun to be had, giving you the chance to use everything Bungie had perfected and built towards game loop-wise. All I can say is, I wish it was longer, and I hope that they play the soundtrack at my funeral. In third place, we have Halo Combat Evolved. What can I say about a 20-plus-year-old game that hasn't already been said by smarter people? I guess I'll start by saying this game is still very fun to play. Without question, if I ever have the urge to play a Halo campaign, I always start with this one. Just booting up the old menu screen puts me in a place I still long to go to from time to time. Not just because it's the first game of the series, but because it feels almost therapeutic at this point.
I couldn't even believe that everyone aboard this thing died in a crash.
The level design hasn't aged in the best ways in the second half of the game, but everything feels timeless and undeniable when looking at it from the outside. It is the birth of something they didn't even realize they had, lightning in a bottle, with just enough spark to send us into a frenzy of fandom that some of us still hold very dear to this day. In all honesty, I didn't play this game for years after it came out. I didn't have an Xbox, so I only really saw snippets of the story at friends' houses with older brothers, but realistically, we spent most of our time on split-screen multiplayer. multiplayer. The first time I played an entire mission from start to finish was the Silent Cartographer that was available in the PC port demo, and I downloaded it on my mom's computer. And again, I mostly used it to play multiplayer. But I played through that mission at least 100 times, leaving me wanting more and eventually ending up with an Xbox of my own during the release of Halo 2. And thankfully, my mom took pity on me and also snagged me a copy of Combat Evolved to play through first. It's the perfect opening, one of the oldest writing tropes we tell as humans. We're met with a fleeing ship from an unknown foe, and we're exposed to a new world that we have no choice but to go and explore as our only possible chance of survival. We meet Chief, Cortana, Keyes, so many characters for the first time.
Don't keep it loaded, son. You'll have to find ammo as you go.
It's Star Wars, basically. Unraveling its secrets, they discover Halo's true purpose and its threat that it poses to all life.
You have no idea how this ring works, do you?
We spend levels expanding and opening this idea, saving groups of disjointed Marines and higher levels of command, all to discover not only are our foes the Covenant a threat, but there's something more sinister, deeper within the walls of this unknown world. To this day, the reveal of the Flood is my favorite twist in any video game, even being too young to appreciate it at the time. It still hits home and echoes the feeling of James Cameron's Aliens, almost to a line of parody.
Sergeant, we're surrounded. God damn it, Jenkins! Fire your weapon!
Built off this silly idea that I'm sure the people of Bungie were having an absolute blast making, launched something completely original and captivating to an entire generation of gamers. The early builds of this game and RTS intentions are so much fun to dive into the depths of YouTube all these years later, and it's been amazing to see people open up the code of this original build to find and restore old levels like Crash Site. Forgotten ideas this title took in its development change from an RTS to the first FPS to be taken seriously on console. Sure, GoldenEye was a thing, but it was never something that gamers could really compare to any of the popular FPS titles on PC at the time. Combat Evolved was a sensation, and I still don't know how they pulled it off and got running at a decent frame rate. If I was to give it any criticism, it would mostly focus on the repetitive level design and the characters feeling very black and white without any nuance. I get that the Chief is a machine, but this writing speaks volumes to the time it was created in. And I don't think the trope works as strongly today, but the gameplay is timeless, and the AI is still killing me all these years later. It's a game that will go down in video game history, and will be the dragon that Xbox will forever chase. Just not as much as this next title.
Halo. It's finished.
No. I think we're just getting started.
Sir, new contact slipping in.
In second place, we have Halo 3. This is pretty expected for me, but it's somehow the hardest for me to place on this list. I think I've done a pretty accurate assessment here, but in a few more weeks, who knows? I could change my mind. To say I was hyped for Halo 3 back in 2007 would be an understatement. I will probably never look forward to the release of something quite like this ever again.
Get away! It's gonna blow!
I had been a bit too young for Combat Evolved when it released, so Halo 2 had been almost my first entry to the series as a child, which left me with one reason left to live, to finish the fight. And boy oh boy did we. Before Microsoft decided we never can stop making Halo games.
I think we're just getting started.
But just like Zelda and Mario were the reason to buy a Nintendo, Halo 3 was the reason many gamers, including PlayStation fanboys, bought an Xbox 360. Everyone crossed the line to get a taste of what this game and ecosystem had to offer, and it's a pretty great ending to the original trilogy Bungie had intended. I'm not sure that it's perfect, but it's damn near close. I think the reason this game played so well was because the technology had finally caught up to the potential of this series. The gameplay and firefights are so well done that I think I've replayed this campaign with friends the most over the years. The item abilities were a fine addition. I know they are not everyone's thing, but it changed up the scenarios you found yourself in fighting through, more so than the prior two games. It's got a wonderful game loop, and I think they've continued to improve upon this idea all the way up to Infinite. The strength of the story was mostly driven from the passion and energy that came with the development of Halo 2, as most of Halo 3's campaign was cut content from the original Halo 2 outline.
I count 2 Scarab! Repeat, 2 Scarab!
So similar to Reach, the opening half of this game feels a bit sluggish compared to the second half. The ending was there, but the road and how we'd end up arriving to that conclusion wasn't fully figured out anymore. So as you play the first 3 levels, you can actually kind of feel Bungie pushing you along the way, hoping you'll get through this until you get to the real meat and potatoes of the 3rd installment.
When I make a promise,
You keep it. I do know how to pick 'em.
lucky me.
The Chief, in my opinion, looks the best he ever looked, and Steve Downes delivers a performance that is timeless as the character himself. Sure, sometimes the faces of Johnson and Miranda are a bit funny at times, but it's charming, and for the most part, the graphics really hold up in this entry, and I actually prefer them to the look of Reach all these years later. Looking back at Halo's Combat Evolved Anniversary Edition that they released just a few years after Halo 3, I always wonder why they didn't use this build to reskin the game. It would have been the perfect look in my opinion. The brutes design-wise are top tier, but they're kinda no fun to fight. I don't know what it is. They're easier than Halo 2 brutes, but their actions are just sluggish or running a train on you. There is no in between. The last few levels, other than this one, are an absolute masterclass in how to end a story in a satisfying, conclusive way that feels fun up until the last frame. I wish so badly I could experience this game again for the first time. I remember the moment I finished it with friends, the day we all shared together playing through it on co-op like it was a national event. But I'm pretty sure I'll never recover from the amount of Doritos that were consumed. When the track Never Forget takes center stage in the campaign and the main menu screen, if you were there, you are instantly transported back to a time and your body still remembers deeply. It may be the best piece of music ever scored in this entire series, or maybe all of gaming, haunting you with its infectious ability to ironically never forget it. It's so simple and yet powerful every time I hear it. Halo 3 is top tier through and through. The emotional depth and balance between moments continues to bring me back over and over again. And if it was up to me, this is where the fight would have been finished.
Hard to believe he's dead. Were it so easy.
Stay with the Master Chief. He'll know what to do.
Yes, sir, Sergeant.
Thanks for the tank. He never gets me anything.
Oh, I know what the ladies like.
I know I've been talking for a long time, but we did it. We finally made it. In first place, we have Halo 2. This was tough. Trying to pick a favorite between Halo 1, 2, and 3 is harder than deciding what I want for dinner tonight, but I think what gives this entry the edge is the tone, the storytelling, the cast, and the overall culmination of hype meeting expectations. I was a bit too young to feel like the cliffhanger ending and split perspective cheated me out of my time with Chief, because it was objectively the best and most enjoyable story to play and I had ever played at the time. The release of Halo 2 was something magical that you can only truly appreciate if you were old enough to really see it. I think the marketing campaigns of later Bungie entries is what most people think about when they imagine the hype for Halo games, but the absolute chokehold this title had on the world was revolutionary. And I know multiplayer was not something I was going to touch on, but the revolution of the console communities were born in this title. It's an exceptional game for so many reasons, probably so many I won't even scratch the surface. The campaign storyline became more immersive than Combat Evolved, showcasing a dual narrative between Master Chief and the Arbiter, offering diverse gameplay perspectives and a moral code of what war really did to its soldiers and citizens. The contrast and background of seeing the perspective of the Covenant was fascinating as a kid, and the music is a beast of its own. Halo 2 boasted an absolute banger soundtrack that definitely contributed to its popularity. Try playing any song from this game in your car while driving, and most likely you'll find yourself drifting over hilltops like your Subaru has turned into a real-life warthog. Composed again by Martin O'Donnell, the music was a blend of orchestral, electric, and rock elements. One key factor that made the music stand out was its ability to dynamically adapt to gameplay situations. The soundtrack seamlessly shifted between different musical themes based on the intensity of the action you were in, creating a much more immersive experience than Combat Evolved.
Relax. I'd rather not piss this thing off.
Demon.
The main theme was now an iconic piece that retained the essence of the original Halo theme while infusing a more intense and energetic vibe, setting the tone and perfectly capturing the energy and change for this game. Each track was perfectly crafted to complete the gameplay, that helped sell emotional moments and intensify the amount of times I wanted to just go for a run mid-game. And since I'm fat, we all know how big of a deal that is.
For a brick, he flew pretty good.
I remember sitting with one of my childhood friends watching the E3 reveal video for Halo 2 Online. We cheered when we saw the addition of dual-wield weapons, like we were in the room. Sure, the brutes are fucking assholes, and yes, the gondola missions are really tedious and repetitive, but the game will never not be fun to boot up and dive into something that feels nostalgic and yet ageless. The Anniversary Edition upgrade of this game that released with the original launch of MCC is absolutely beautiful still, but knowing that this game has now hit its 20-year mark speaks to its ability to still dominate the conversation and capture the hearts of those trying it out for the first time. I think I still prefer to play this game on the original graphics, but getting to experience Halo 2 visually the way it felt in our heads back in 2004 is a real treat that not every title gets the benefit of when it comes to restoration. And lastly, Keith David, Captain Arby, will go down in the books as giving my favorite performance in all of gaming.
This armor suits you, but it cannot hide that mark. Nothing ever will. You are the arbiter, the will of the prophets. But these are my elites. Their lives matter to me, yours does not. That makes two of us.
You know, with a very special shout out to Michael Winscott. His prophet is f***ing insane.
You may leave, Tartarus.
But I thought...
And take your brutes with you.
But Keith's somber yet authoritative performance across Halo 2 and 3 is something really special. His deep and distinctive voice brought a commanding presence to the character that was so specific and was able to stand toe-to-toe with Steve Downes' chief. The behind-the-scenes DVD Voices of Halo might be just as impactful to watch as any level the game has. It's a monumental time capsule that showcases the love and passion this title was provided and deserved. Halo 2 is possibly the greatest game ever made. It delivers pretty much the perfect follow-up to its previous entry, expanding on everything that came before it in a way that didn't feel disconnected from the core soul of Combat Evolved. But what's most special to me is the way the intro explores the fallout and repercussions of what finishing the previous game had on its world and the stakes that continue to grow because of them. The intro is a contrasting mirrored story that introduces the Arbiter and reinforces the legend of the Master Chief, one taking place just outside the orbit of Earth and the other aboard High Charity. One is a ceremony of honor, where the Chief and Sergeant Johnson are rewarded for their actions and bravery, while the other is a tribunal carried out by the High Prophets against the Arbiter, who has failed his task for saving the Forerunner relic, Halo, and is seemingly cast out of the Covenant with the charge of heresy. These two scenes taking place side by side are what kicks this story into high gear. It felt like an epic movie when I was a kid, and now with the anniversary graphics, it looks like one.
Chief, when you get to Earth, good luck.
After I'm through with truth.
Don't make a girl a promise if you know you can't keep it.
And that's my ranking for the main Halo series campaigns, and where I hold them in my heart, at least for today. But again, this is just my opinion, and I'd love to see all of your rankings in the comments below. So where do we go from here? Is there still room for this franchise to grow? Can Microsoft catch lightning in a bottle all over again with this possible next entry? I guess that whole 10 years plan didn't really go the way they were hoping. Don't get me wrong, I am in love with so much of what Infinite did to bring the story and feeling of Halo back to its roots, but it's still missing something. The Banished are very cool, and for people who never played any of the Halo Wars entries, I think there is still a lot of potential out there for this faction offshoot of the Covenant to branch into, but I know we all want more. The glue that brought this game from a silly space shooter into a high-stakes world with consequences, and if you've watched this far, I think you know exactly what I'm about to say. The only thing missing when it comes to modern Halo games is the Flood. You know it, and Halo Studios knows it. Hell, they included skins and designs inspired by the Flood-infected Spartans during Season 5. The Flood is the missing glue that held this story and franchise together, and turned it on its head, leaving us fearful and begging for more in hopes of being the one to single-handedly save the galaxy. According to other lore-based content creators, the Flood is still out there, possibly in other galaxies that could somehow cross back into our core universe. It would be great to see this series tell an epic story again, one where the stakes have never been higher, leaving only one man for the job, Chief. And at the end of the day, you. It's no coincidence they never show his face in the games, because to us, in Bungie's original philosophy, it doesn't matter who's under that helmet. It's you. It's all of us. Maybe we don't all sound badass like Steve Downes, but we are that suit of armor. And we need a weapon.
Right this way.